All praises and glory to Yahweh Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Ha Rakah Quadash. Double honors to our apostle elders which rule great millstone well. And shalom to the hopeful elect of the nation of Israel. May you endure into the end. Shalom. Wa Abba. So as we all know, they got this fight that went viral. It's called the boat ride Montgomery Ball. All right. And I believe this was set up on Esau's behalf. The Edomite, the so-called white men. As you can see, they're actually red. As you see in this bottom video here, they're red. They're not white. Okay. This man here has a white t-shirt on. And you can see that he or she is not white. They're red. See right here? See that woman? She has red skin. She has a white t-shirt or white dress. This woman, this Edomite woman in her red dress, matches the red of her skin. All right? But even this man, the so-called black man, he has a white shirt, and you can see the man above him that he is not a so-called, white, the color white as they claim to be, but they are red. They are the red devil the Bible speaks of. All right, and that's why this is coming out, is because they're being, as you would say, exposed. Okay, they are the devil the Bible speaks of, and this is set up to cause Jake to want to fight back against their oppressor, the so-called white man, because they're becoming wise, as it says in the scriptures. It says oppression makes a wise man mad. So Jake is becoming wise. Jake is the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian, which has been scattered throughout the world of slavery. All right, and we're becoming wise to the ways of the devil, the so-called white man, the red devil the Bible speaks of. It says in Ecclesiastes 7 and verse 7, surely oppression maketh a wise man mad, and a gift destroyeth the heart. Let's go into the word let's go into the word a wise man.
Strong's H2450. Chacham.
Chacham. All right. So it says pretty much a wise man, skillful, wise. It says shrewd, crafty, cunning, wily, subtle, learned, shrewd class of men. That class of men being the Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians are waking up to the Israelites, to being Israelites, all right? And they know that the so-called white man is a racist red devil, all right? And that's what's happening. They're becoming learned of who they are and who their enemy is. Prudent, all right, meaning to know something. It says wise ethically and religiously, which our religion is actually our ethnicity, our customs that we kept as our tradition, as our customs that were given from our God, Yahweh, Ba'asham Yahushai. All right, like keeping a beard. All right. There's a lot of them. The whole law in the scriptures is our custom. This is our heritage. That's the word I was looking for. A heritage. The Bible is the heritage of the Israelites. Okay? And the devil, the so-called white man, he's coming down with great wrath, knowing that he had but a short time, because just like we are waking up to who we are, they are also waking up to who they are. All right? Which it tells you in Revelation 12 and verse 12 that they come down with great wrath, knowing that they have but a short time. Okay? And what Esau is doing with this, I believe, is he is trying to rouse up Judah just like it said he would. Revelation 12, verse 12, it says, "Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil, the so-called white man," starting with the elite of the race of the so-called white race, "is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time." And why does he know? Because you got the prophets telling the truth, right? We're standing upon our feet telling the truth. And so great fear fell upon them, which saw them. Revelation 11, verse 11, "And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them." So out of great fear are they doing this with this boat rumble, okay? Because what it's going to do is cause you to rouse up, all right, you Judites, the so-called Negro, all right, which is going to also include the so-called Latino and Native American Indian, into a race war, okay? Which is also a civil war, because we have civil rights now, so it'd be considered a civil war, all right? But Esau's going to rouse up Judah into a race war. It tells you in Genesis 49, it says, "Gather yourselves together," in verse 2, "and hear, ye sons of Jacob, and hearken unto Israel your father." And what he tells us is the prophecies of what's to come to each tribe in these last days. It even says the last days. I should have started in the first verse. Verse 1, "And Jacob called unto his sons, and said, Gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days," right? Let me jump to a different app, because that other app is messing up. Oh, that's the good news version. Let's go ahead and go here. Genesis 49, verse, let's see, where with Judah, it says, Judah, verse 9, is a lion's whelp, which when you look up that word whelp, what that means is he's a cub, all right? He's like a young lion, actually like a small lion, not so much like a cub, but pretty much a weaned lion, pretty much looking for trouble. It says, "From the prey, my son, thou art gone up," right? So you instead of chasing your enemy up the tree, now you went up the tree, right? You were afraid. And I heard a woman explain that this is why this went viral, which they're saying this is why this rumble in Alabama, Montgomery, went viral. But I believe it was for other reasons, because they're setting up the so-called black man for a race war, all right? Because the so-called white man's blessing is the gun. And if you saw how these so-called black men came at him in this video, they could have shot them and been justified, all right? Because their lives being, pretty much overwhelmed with such a force of people and violence, the Caucasians could have shot these people and been justified. But they didn't, because they're using this to promote why the so-called white race has to come down with that great wrath, knowing that they have a short time. It says in verse 9, "Judah is a lion's whelp, from the prey, my son, thou art gone up. But now the tables are turning where they're rousing Jake up. He's no longer taking the shit, right? Jake is ready to burst, right? They're tired of the shit. I heard a man say that today. I'll play it for you. That pretty much they're tired. The so-called black people and Negroes, and it starts with the so-called Negroes, which are the head tribe of Israel, Judah, all right? But it goes all the way down to the so-called Latinos and Native American Indians, that we are tired, and even the other nations, the heathen. Look at Africa, all right? Look at China joining Russia, right? Because they're tired of this Western so-called Caucasian with his white supremacy, his proud ways, all right? They're tired, so now they're being roused up. Look at the ones in Africa, which you got a lot of Jake in Africa, but in South Africa, they were saying shoot to kill, right? The so-called white man, the farmer, and the market man in Africa, because the so-called white man is greatly despised, and mainly you so-called Caucasians of the western side of the earth. It says, he couched as a lion, he got comfortable in his slavery, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? So who's going to rouse up Judah, the so-called black man? Esau's going to rouse him up. And that's what I believe this video is for, okay? They're rousing Judah up to start to fight against the so-called white race so that they could make a strategic strike against you and shoot you down in the streets, right? Which there's going to become a time of trouble. It's called Jacob's trouble, which that's where we're leading. You know, this is like the beginnings of it, but it's going to climax when they make that implantable microchip mandatory for buying and selling. Okay, that's really going to make this place get violent because people are going to be killing each other for food and for the great tribulation. All right, Jeremiah 30, it says in verse 6, ask ye now and see whether a man doth travail with child, wherefore do I see every man with his hands on his loins as a woman in travail, and all faces are turned into paleness. Alas, for that day is great. Alas, for that day is great, so that none is like it. It is even the time of Jacob's trouble, but he shall be saved out of it. The elect of the nation of Israel, the body of Yahushai, the head Yahushai will save the body. All right? But the rest of Israel that are not of the 1/3, they're the 2/3, are going to perish in America because they're a part of Esau's beast system. They're going to be deceived into taking the implantable microchip so that they'll be able to operate in this beast system. All right, but there's going to be a race war, all right, which the scriptures, which is the word of Yahweh, prophesied of. Salakia. I usually use the blue letter, but let's go ahead and go to, hold on, I'm making a video. Hold on. It says that there'll be race wars in Matthew 24. It says, and this is Yahushua prophesying of the end days of the kingdom of the wicked. For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, which even Esau's house is divided, right? Their house is divided. And there shall be famines, and that even was shown in this brawl that happened in Alabama, Montgomery, all right in front of the Legacy Museum, which I hope to show you that too. This was in a very special place where this happened, all right? Meaning it was set up, okay? This wasn't just a coincidence. This was set up. And obviously it goes all the way up to the Heavenly Father, Yahweh and His Son, Yahushua, the Messiah of Israel. But this is even pushed through the elite, right? Yahweh Shem Yahushua used the elite, the so-called white race, to do these kind of things to signal different things. They're like rituals, satanic rituals. There's another word that I could use. I can't remember right now. But either way, everybody knows how these devils work. They do programming, They'll do something to show you that something happened. And what happened that caught my eye was this so-called black man security. He's a Jake, probably. I don't know him personally, but he looks like a so-called Negro, American Negro. So he'd be a Jake, right? He threw his hat up in the air, right? And that's a ritual of Freemasonry, which they throw that graduation cap in the air, signifying change, the change of hats. So I believe that was a signal, all right, to the elite, that it's or the elite sending out a signal downward to their, entourages, that it's time to become bloody with Jacob, the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian. Because on this same day did they also, George Washington, on August 7th, start the militias. All right, he started the militias this same day that this fight broke out. All right. So it says in Matthew 24, verse 7, Yahushua says, "For nation shall rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom, and there shall be famines and pestilences and earthquakes in diverse places. All these are the beginning of sorrows. Then shall they deliver you up." Why? Because they set it up. They set it up to attack us, right? It says, "Then shall they deliver you up to be afflicted, and shall kill you. And ye shall be hated of all nations for my name's sake," because the truth is coming out. And they're being revealed, the so-called white men in these other nations, as being the enemy to Yahweh Ba'Shem Yahushai, and having control of the Israelites, the so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians. Which, if you know the scriptures, it says you got to go into slavery now. Because you had us into slavery, now you got to go into slavery. So these other nations are getting roused up because they're upset. It says in Revelation 13:9, "If any man have an ear, let him hear. He that leadeth into captivity shall go into captivity. He that killeth with the sword must be killed with the sword. Here is the patience and the faith of the saints." And something I've been seeing on this here was a lot of Jake thinking that we won, right? All I hear is like, we won one, right? They're all Jake is everywhere celebrating, but that's a false comfort, a false success, because this was set up to actually make you feel that way, to deceive you into thinking that you won, so that you actually think that you could come in and attack Edomites, and that's going to give this Edomite the ability to shoot you down. All right? Just like they did in the movie Birth of a Nation, the original one. They set it up to make the so-called white man look like he had to control the so-called black man that was a wild beast, an uncontrollable sex addict that was going to come for your wives and your daughters, right? And that's where they got the burning of the cross, all right? Well, this is the same shit that they're doing right now. They're showing the so-called blacks, right, in one of the most racist states in the country, Alabama, in Montgomery, where a lot of racial tension happened, right? And they're allowing the so-called blacks to attack this white family, this red devils, right? And that now they're only charging the so-called Caucasians. And the first mayor of Montgomery is a black man. So this is really, really rousing up the racial tensions in America. All right? They're going to start killing each other soon. Soon these so-called Edomites, so-called Caucasians, which are biblically Edomites, that's the correct way. The so-called Caucasian is the biblical Edomite, the red devil the Bible speaks of. And the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian, all right, which are the Israelites, whether they know it or not, all right, there's going to be a war in America between these two race of people. All right, and it's gonna be because the elite, all right, their pride. It tells you in this one here, the pride of them. On the Apocrypha, let's go to Second Esdras. And the pride of who? The pride of the ruling class of the so-called white race. Second Esdras 15. It says, I'll start at 14. Woe to the world and them that dwell therein, for the sword, the so-called white race, Esau, Edom, and their destruction draweth nigh. So their end is near, and they can see it, so they're becoming violent. And one people shall stand up and fight against another, a race war, and swords in their hands, with guns and knives and bats, or whatever you want to use. Eventually, there's going to be a time where nuclear missiles fly and devour America, after they make that implantable microchip mandatory for buying and selling. It says, for there shall be sedition among men, and invading one and another. They shall not regard their kings nor princes, and the course of their actions shall stand in their power. A man shall desire to go into a city, and shall not be able. For because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, the pride of the ruling class of the so-called white race. The houses shall be destroyed, and the men shall be afraid, because you're going to have war in the streets of America. All right? And they're going to have to literally send in the UN troops to start to disarm Americans, which this is all part of the plan. But also, it's going to be the time where they start to implant that microchip into your bodies, all right, which is an abomination. And if you're an Israelite and you take that, you allow them to deceive you, which you don't really have a choice, but you go with the program of the devil, the so-called white race, and you take that implantable mark, that chip that they want to make mandatory for buying and selling, you're going to be destroyed with them, all right? It says, and it tells you 2/3 of Israel will be destroyed with these devils. It says, for because of their pride, the city shall be troubled, and houses shall be destroyed, and men shall be afraid. A man shall have no pity upon his neighbor, but shall destroy their houses with the sword, and spoil their goods because of the lack of bread and for great tribulation. Which it tells you that even the women, they're going to get smashed. Right? It says in Zechariah 14, verse 2, I will gather all nations, the UN nations, against Jerusalem to battle. And we're in America, so this is where they'll be. They'll be here in America, these foreign troops coming against the so-called Negro, Latino, and Native American Indian. That's why it's called Jacob's Trouble. The so-called white race, which hates us, has lifted up their head. It says, and the city shall be taken, and the houses rifled, meaning destroyed, and the women ravished, meaning they're going to rape the women. And half of the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall not be cut off from the city. Right? So you're going to have war everywhere, all over the cities. Right? Some people are going to be taken into captivity, and some are going to try to run and hide, but it tells you that they're going to meet animals like lions and bears, right? These mountain lions, these bears that are in the zoos, right? They're going to come out of hiding or come out of captivity because it's allowed by Yahweh Ba'Hashem Yahushai, and they're going to eat the flesh of the people. They're going to devour these people. But eventually, America is going to be destroyed with nuclear missiles, all right? And also, you have the so-called UFOs, the chariots of heaven, with the angels on them, right? Which they follow Yahweh Shai on his chariot, and there's going to be flame that come out of there and devour people. So it's going to be a very dangerous time because it's judgment time, and many people are going to be put to death. The majority of the world is going to die. Okay? I'm talking about people. All right? And the earth, it's going to be in a state of destruction, but then it's going to come back into its full glory under the Israelites who are going to rule next. All right? We're going to rule according to the laws, the righteous laws of Yahweh Ba'asham Yahushai, which are in the scriptures. All right? And which is going to prosper the whole earth, including even the heathen, right? Because they're going to serve us and they're going to be joyful in serving us. Right now, all the nations mourn under this wicked, the devil, which they serve today, the so-called white race. That's why you see those Africans, the Hamite race, they're saying, hey, let's kill this fucking cracker. Why? Because he's the devil, and since we've done business with him, our lives have suffered. Right? In India, they said that they hate Bill Gates because he poisoned all those people with his sword. So there's different kinds of swords. All right, but the devil, the so-called white race, was blessed with the sword, and that's what they're going to revert to, is the sword. They're going to come down with great violence, knowing that they have but a short time, and eventually it's going to lead to them using that great sword which has been given to them. All right, now let me get this video, which I've seen a lot of videos like this, where it says Chicago on the way to Montgomery, which you can see it's a lot of people on bikes, right? For a few, 47 minutes, you got bike riders going by, right? So they're saying a race war. See, that's what Esau wants. Esau wants you to rouse up, because then he can send in his troops to destroy you and your homes, rape your wives, right?
Fight, greatest piece of cinema I've ever seen. Honestly, some of the best action sequences all around. When that dude...
And what he just said was an action sequence, a wrestling action sequence, which they do this in choreography, I think it is. All right. So I Googled literally action sequence in movie fighting, and it pulls up all kinds of information, because what he's talking about is drama fighting, okay, like wrestling, WWE, all right? There's sequences that you practice, and you practice them so that you're able to carry them out perfectly on live so that it looks like it's natural, all right? But they're actually practice action sequences. In fact, let's just take out the in-fight movie. And let's see. See? Action sequences. It says, here are 5 of the best American action sequence of all time. Action sequences are one of the great parts of fast-paced action movies and franchises in American films, and these are some of the best of all time. Which they have this word I was about to say. I said it improperly, but let me see if I can...
Choreography. The sequence of steps and movements in dance or figure skating, especially in a ballet or other stage dance.
See?
Choreography.
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 The sequence of steps, actions, and movements in dance or fighting, figure skating, especially in ballet or other stage dance, which I believe this was a stage dance.
That security guard is being... Alabama riverboat fight, greatest piece of cinema I've ever seen. Honestly, some of the best action sequences all around. When that security guard is being 8-on-1 by the shirtless rednecks, and then a dude jumped into the water to swim across from a boat to the dock to even the odds. He sees 8-on-1, and he's like this one security guard having the shit beat out of him by shirt.
Which is kid that swam across, he has a publicist.
Publicist is a person whose job is to generate and manage publicity for a company, a brand, or public figure, especially a celebrity, or for a work such as a book, film, or album.
which the guy that swims across the water, he had a publicist.
Bravery and compassion shown by Aaron, our cherished young hero. While I'm reading, y'all got the video of him swimming across that water? In the face of adversity, Aaron selflessly came to the rescue of a fellow colleague, showcasing courage beyond his years. We are immensely proud of his actions and the values he exemplifies, standing as an inspiration to us all. Show the video of him swimming. The overwhelming love and support pouring in from all corners of the state and surrounding areas have deeply touched Aaron. Your kindness and encouragement have shown him the power of unity and the warmth of a caring community. The outpouring of affection serves as a reminder that together we can create positive change and uplift one another. We, the publicist team, his parents, along with, here's the video of Aaron doing his thing, going across that water. Go right, come on, y'all, pull it up. We, the publicist team, his parents, along with his extended family, want to extend our sincerest gratitude to each and every one of you for your unwavering support during this time. Your messages and guests.
You hear? He has a publicist. And once again, what is a publicist? A publicist is a person whose job is to generate and manage publicity for a company, a brand, or public figure, especially a celebrity, or for a work such as a book, film, or album. So this what is it? Alabama, Montgomery, Riverside Front, boat brawl was set up. It's a bunch of actors. Okay? In fact, even when they do the chair, and the guy's hitting everybody with the chair, he's doing it exactly as they train in the WWE to hit someone with the chair. All right? It was perfect choreography. Okay? And then at the location where this is done, there's a medal to an Edomite named Charles Davis. All right? Which, what he was known for was leading the men into combat against the Japanese to slaughter the Japanese. All right, so they're pretty much calling for war, a racial war against really anyone that's against their beast system. Okay, they got to get violence happening in the streets of America so that they could bring forth their implantable microchip and make it mandatory for buying and selling.
Rednecks. One of them came running in and gave a fucking running knee in salmon shorts. Like, these are bag of shit, shirtless, drunk rednecks attacking a lone black security guard. And this one dude jumps in and swims across. The crowd reacts the same way in Avengers Endgame when you hear Falcon go, "On your left," and the portals open. The crowd watching this just went, "Oh my God, we can be involved too." And it goes on 8-on-1 to like 46-on-8. And then a dude has a chair.
And another thing I wanted to point out was the boat that was all these people were on, these Jakes. It was called Harriet No. 2. All right. And the Harriet No. 2, all right, named after Harriet Tubman, which Harriet Tubman was known for so-called trying to free the slaves, which is a lie. They even called her Moses, all right? I saved this. I was doing some research on this when the Spirit was, guiding me through this research. It says about Harriet Tubman, and you read right here, it says that they called her Moses, all right? It says, let me see here. I know it was right here. Here it is. It says by 1860, Tubman had earned the nickname Moses, right, for liberating so many enslaved people at great risk to her own life, all right? But she wasn't freeing nobody. She was bringing them out of private slave owners to corporate slave owners in the North. the North wasn't any less racist than the South, because the North, what you have up in the North are sundown towns, which I found out recently. All the towns in Colorado, and I'm sure throughout the United States of the North, right, that they had sundown towns, which if you were caught outside being a so-called Negro or Latino or a Native American Indian, they would torture you and kill you because you were still hated. All right, Harriet Tubman did not help anybody but the so-called white race. All right, so she don't definitely deserve the name Moses, but that's what that boat, that ship that everybody was fighting on, yeah, Alabama Montgomery Riverside Riverfront Boat Ride Brawl. That boat that was in that video was called Harriet 2.
Just smashing people. It's like the Hulk. He's just smashing people with a chair. They all deserve the belt. Everyone deserves the belt. Even the shitty cops. Because the cops are like, I kind of don't want to stop this. They're like...
Right. They didn't even interfere. For the most part, they pretty much just stood back and let it happen, because it was all an act. Another thing I wanted to point out was back in my day, I've been in some pretty good fights at this size, and people come out bloody, okay? The security guard wasn't even bloody, all right? He wasn't even bloody. He had a white t-shirt on. You see this guy with his white t-shirt, and there ain't no blood on him. There ain't no blood whatsoever. This is all an act, okay? This is all an act. And where this is, all right, where that fight took place, it says Legacy Museum. From enslavement to mass incarceration. This museum here is actually right where that place is where they got in that brawl. Okay? See, and it's revealing the white, the so-called white man and his Jim Crow laws that are still happening today. They never were taken out of place. They've been in place and actually been added to. See, and in this place, they have all these things hanging, and they represent bodies of the so-called Negro that been lynched by the so-called white man in Alabama Montgomery. Right? Exactly right where this fight happened. So this is, a setup to stir up racial tensions so that the so-called white race, the Red Devil, could kill so-called Negroes, Latinos, and Native American Indians using that gun, the sword that was given to him, which will be the destruction of his kingdom. All right? All right, I pulled it up where that Legacy Museum is. It's right here in Montgomery, Alabama. Montgomery, Alabama. And this is where that fight happened. It was right on the curve. This bank, right, paid for by the bank. And this green part right here is where you would get to actually ride that ship, and that's where that fight happened. See? So this is where the Harriet 2 would have been, where you go to get off into the green, where you go into the river. See the path to go down to the boat, and this is where the fighting would have happened, right here. See? And you have that museum right here in this area. All right? The Legacy Museum right there. All right? So I believe it was a signal, all right, to actually engage in civil war. Okay? See, it says right here, in distractify, football refs don't throw their heads off just because they're fed up. They're fed up with players on the field. All right. So that's what also I was thinking when I seen that, like a referee, right? The security guard. He was supposed to be like the referee between the blacks and the whites. And what he do, he went up and threw his hat off, being frustrated with the players on the field. All right. And he had a black and white shirt on. Okay. Another one. Let me put ceremony. It says, why do we toss graduation caps in the air? It says, last week we talked about how the mortar board became a graduation attire staple, but we teased about a more fun tradition centered around the cap tossing them in the air. Okay, so it actually goes back to military custom, all right? It goes back to the tradition here. It says the tradition dates back to 1912 at the U.S. Naval Academy. Prior to graduation, students of the academy were required to serve 2 years as midshipmen before becoming commissioned as Navy officers. And Navy dealing with the water. Where are they at? On the river. Requiring them to keep their uniform hats. Upon graduation for the class of 1912, which right after that, in 13, you had the Federal Reserve made. Right? Yeah. Federal Reserve was created in 1913. All right, going back to this reading here, it says, upon graduation for the class of 1912, graduates were given their new officer hats, deeming their midshipman hats unnecessary, prompting them to toss the old ones into the air as a form of celebration. Right? So a form of moving forward with their agenda. That's what that means. All right, and that's what that man did. He threw his hat up in the air, just like here, just like they do in a graduation. It says, as a reminder, our team continues to operate with a modified business solution, complete with remote. Oh, that's going into the school. Salaki, I thought they was having more on why they threw the hat up. See, it tells right there, 1912 Naval Academy. And they're on water. They're on the river, so it ain't no coincidence.
It's like not condoning violence, but everybody has the right to self-defense. And, really, at the end of the day, the solidarity was amazing. I don't want to be like pouring, I don't know, sadness on all of this, but I just get concerned about, what could have happened if one of those guys on the boat had a gun in an open carry state. Like, this could have been a lot worse. And I'm concerned about the legal troubles. There was one of the brothers who hit the white woman with a chair, and what's going to happen, should have got arrested for that. But at the end of the day, people, this is a different generation. And Joe Madison talks about this all the time. It's like the days of having to sit back and take it are over, and you've shown weeks. Every week you got videos like this of people going nuts and black folks standing up for themselves. And if people are going to go down, folks have decided we're going to go down swinging. And this was a classic and latest example of that. I'm just glad nobody was strapped and that this didn't end up a lot worse. Jermichael Phelps did his thing. And
which it is going to get worse. Those straps are going to start being used. They're going to come out, and you're going to see more and more violence under racial tensions. That's the plan of the so-called white man, which his plan is to divide and conquer, which that's what he's doing right now. He's dividing the people amongst each other, right? Taking away resources, taking away jobs with his deception, with his media, putting out propaganda, All right.
We have tolerated so much shit. We have turned our cheek. We have backed up. We've de-escalated situations. We've had these Karens jumping in black folks' faces and all this sort of stuff. Yep. And folk just tired of that BS.
Absolutely, and to be quite honest, we are going to see more of it. I mean, everything that's going on in the political space and the like, and some of these guys actually think they've been deputized by the police or something, and so they feel emboldened to just put their hands on us, and they're not even strapped. They just feel so emboldened to black bodies that they can do that. This man is an employee, and like we all said, what would have happened if people didn't jump in? I mean, they could have beat him up so badly, he could have fell into the water and drowned. And this is happening everywhere, every single place we go. People who are not even law enforcement, it's like they've been emboldened watching those videos with the police and so on and so forth to feel that they can do anything to us anytime, anywhere. And too many of us are saying enough. I can't think of any black person I know who would not have intervened in that situation because we're just tired of it. And people have been watching a lot of these videos from, like the 60s and stuff where so many of our people had to take it, and they think that that's just going to repeat itself. And that it just ain't real anymore.
Absolutely, Renita. And but let me also remind people, while a lot of folks have been commenting, this is the same state as we speak that's trying to keep a black second congressional district out of black folks' hands as well. So we ain't just catching hands on the river, we catching hands in the legislature.
Right, and you know what? I bet the part where you mentioned about how this is the first black mayor of Montgomery, I bet you that has something to do with tensions probably rising in the area, and it's the white lash that we
Donald Trump was there Saturday night.
Right, exactly. And it's the white lash that we always talk about. First black mayor of Montgomery, come on. Like, we know what that means. And so
tonight there's a candidates forum.
At the end of the day, all that happened is Jason Aldean let these Jim Crow relic throwbacks get mollywopped. He walked them right into getting mollywopped. That's what happened.
Julian.
I love it. I mean, the mayor is a relatively young brother. He's very good. I've met him a couple of times. He's really on the ball. So he managed to put out a nice statement that just basically said no room for violence. But, the statements have been powerful.